This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Life is full of challenges, but you don't have to face them alone. At intouch.org, you'll find powerful sermons from Dr. Charles Stanley, daily devotionals, and resources designed to strengthen your faith and bring hope into your everyday life. Whether you're searching for encouragement, biblical wisdom, or practical guidance, intouch.org is here to help you grow closer to God. Discover truth that speaks to your heart. Visit intouch.org today. Thanks.
Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. What a day. The Supreme Court of the United States made a ruling on the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And to sum it up very neatly, the justices decided by a 6-3 majority that designing districts to protect minorities is discrimination. It was a stunning ruling and a rollback for what was, frankly, one of the most important pieces of legislation ever adopted by the Congress. That legislation, of course, the 1965 Voting Rights Act. I received a note from a correspondent who regularly sends me his views, and this is what he said. John, the Supreme Court just struck a massive blow to Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, the last major protection against racist, rigged election maps. Six justices, nominated by Republicans, rewrote the rules so that proving racial discrimination in redistricting will be virtually impossible. Justice Kagan said it herself in her dissent. Section 2 is now, and I quote directly, all but a dead letter. What does this mean? It means that states now have the power to draw maps designed to eliminate Black communities and other communities, to lock them out of political power, and there seems to be nothing we can do. Mississippi is already calling a special session to redraw its maps. Florida is redistricting as we speak. Districts that Black communities fought for decades to win could be redrawn out of existence overnight. And this ruling opens the door for sweeping, partisan gerrymandering that will, in the view of many, discriminate against Black communities and their representation in Congress. I am speaking to you bluntly today because I will confess, I am a product of the Warren Court, Brown versus the Board of Education, and so many other landmark decisions. And those decisions helped to protect minorities. Yes, including Brown versus the Board of Education, but on so many other levels. And what happened in 1965, after the Civil Rights Bill of 1964, was that the President of the United States, Lyndon Baines Johnson, made the decision that we had to improve, expand our voting rights. That was the premise. And the bill was adopted, and I must say, with Republican support, including the late Everett McKinley Dirksen, who was the minority leader of the United States Senate, and Thomas Henry Kuchel, the minority whip in the United States Senate. The leadership of the Republican Party stood for the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. We must know that what the Supreme Court has done is legal. It is the right of the Supreme Court to make these rulings. We should know that Chief Justice Roberts, hardly neutral, has advocated that the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was a miscarriage for years. And now that decision stands. It is for the communities that care deeply about civil rights a major blow. When Donald Trump was notified, and by the way, we watched it on camera because CNN was interviewing him and it was all captured, Donald Trump was thrilled at the decision. And Republicans should be thrilled at the decision, at least the Republican Party of today. I want to say clearly that this is a huge blow to those of us who believe that voting and voting with care and voting as it should take place should never be limited. And the fact that the justices now say that designing districts to protect minorities is discrimination, does that strike you as a bit of an oxymoron? The 1965 Voting Rights Act was an important part of building a new America. The 6-3 ruling in a case from Louisiana, and by the way, the governor of Louisiana is now talking about suspending the primary elections so that the elections before they're held can be redesigned to conform with this ruling. Allowing states or courts to design voting districts in order to protect racial minorities was a key aspect of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The minority did not prevail. In this case, Justice Samuel Alito, writing for the majority, and I quote him directly, forces states to engage in the very race-based discrimination that the Constitution forbids. He went on to say, the Constitution almost never permits the federal government or a state to discriminate on the basis of race. Well, that's true. But you must understand that this sets up a tremendous paradox. Should the court ruling prevail, African Americans and other minorities may well face a Jim Crow-like effect. This is a stunning decision. It was Chief Justice John Roberts, Justice Clarence Thomas, Justice Neil Gorsuch, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and Justice Amy Coney Barrett who made this ruling. The 6 so-called conservative justices on the court. What does this mean? Well, first of all, we will see a reaction in the African American community. There is no doubt that African Americans should be disturbed by this, but all Americans should be disturbed by this. This is a turn backward. And the fact that the governor of Louisiana, with, by the way, the support of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who is also from Louisiana, that they are now making a determined effort to change the direction of voting when it comes to the primaries, suspending the primary temporarily so things can be adjusted to conform with the court ruling, is to me profoundly disturbing. How will this affect the future of African Americans in this country? No question about it. African Americans are going to be disproportionately affected. Now, let me be clear. The mayors of major cities, all of whom are African Americans, issued a statement immediately condemning this decision. And this, to me, goes to the core of who we are. When Lyndon Johnson stood before the United States Congress and uttered the words, "We shall overcome," It seems to me if Johnson were alive today, he would be horrified. Is there a recourse? Well, it's very simple. Who is president of the United States matters. And let me point out to you, the Supreme Court does, on occasion, reverse its decisions. Plessy versus Ferguson was overturned by Brown versus the Board of Education. Roe v. Wade was overturned in terms of giving women the right to make their own decisions about their own bodies. There are major landmark decisions that are overturned. And the only way that happens is if the court is a majority in one way or the other. And so what we now face is a real determination. First of all, there is no doubt in my mind that what the Supreme Court did will be a major issue in the election of 2026. And if the ruling stands an even greater barrier in 2028. When I say barrier, I mean people will be upset about this decision, and it may motivate them to vote in larger numbers, which I guess is a good thing, isn't it? But there's another factor, and that is who is president of the United States. Donald Trump made clear his positions on the Voting Rights Act, on the question of a woman's right to choose, before his election as president, and yet he won. And what that means is that in the presidential campaigns to come, we must recognize something that I have articulated for years. We are not just voting for a president. We are voting for the Supreme Court. And who controls the United States Senate come January of next year will be critical. If the Republicans control the Senate, all of these decisions will be upheld. If the Democrats control the Senate, the whole question of who will sit on the court will be, frankly, up for grabs. We have a major decision coming down that I want to comment on very quickly, and that is birthright citizenship. The Constitution in the 14th Amendment is very clear about birthright citizenship, and yet the question is being argued and debated today, and the Supreme Court will shortly make a decision on whether birthright citizenship will prevail. This will be another major test for the Supreme Court. Now, the expectation is that birthright citizenship will be upheld, not with a unanimous vote, but most assuredly with a split Supreme Court. But even if that happens, the idea of putting in question birthright citizenship and having certainly Thomas and Alito voting to overturn it, maybe others will have to see, says a lot about what I've just talked about. Who is nominated, who is confirmed to serve on the United States Supreme Court. We'll talk more about this in the days to come. But I wanted also to comment on the fact that Pete Hegseth testified yesterday before Congress on the Iran war. It was his first appearance in Congress since the Trump administration went to war in Iran. Let me point out that Pete Hegseth faced questioning from skeptical Democrats, and he made a statement that absolutely stunned me. He said this, and I want to quote him directly: "The biggest challenge, the biggest adversary we face at this point are the reckless, feckless, and defeatist words of congressional Democrats and some Republicans." That's the biggest enemy we face when it comes to this question of American involvement in Iran. This was horrifying to me. And Hegseth is very clear. He is determined to carry out this policy. And there was one other thing that happened, and that had to do with John Garamendi of California, who called the war a geopolitical calamity, a strategic blunder, and a self-inflicted wound in America. Hegseth blasted Garamendi, saying, "Who are you cheering for here? Your hatred for President Trump blinds you in the success of the war." This is fascinating because it shows the deep lines and divisions that exist over what is happening today in Iran. I'm going to be watching all of these questions, but the bottom line is it matters who is president of the United States, whether it has to do with domestic policy, like the Voting Rights Act, or it has to do with the war in Iran. And who is president matters not only in terms of policy, but in terms of who sits on the Supreme Court, and yes, who is Secretary of Defense of the United States. This, my friends, is just the beginning of what must be a great and powerful debate, which I hope will culminate in the congressional elections just a few months away. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts, drop a comment on YouTube or Spotify, and click any of the links in the show notes to connect with me on social media. That is the place to go with questions, because, of course, tomorrow is Friday, and we are expecting to do our question and answer session. Make sure, then, that you go to the show links on YouTube or Spotify, connect with me on social media, make sure your questions are here. And make them questions, not statements, please. Remember to share this episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand. Let me point out that this show has been getting so much positive attention that we're excited to bring on the advertising support that we have, and we are having inquiries from others who want to advertise as well. This helps us to create more opportunities for Around the Political World with John Rothman. And of course, I want to say a special word of thanks to Gogo Zoger, the wonderful producer of this program, who, does such a great job. Gogo, thank you for everything you do. And to all of you, I will be back tomorrow, right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then.
Life is full of challenges, but you don't have to face them alone. At intouch.org, you'll find powerful sermons from Dr. Charles Stanley, daily devotionals, and resources designed to strengthen your faith and bring hope into your everyday life. Whether you're searching for encouragement, biblical wisdom, or practical guidance, intouch.org is here to help you grow closer to God. Discover truth that speaks to your heart. Visit intouch.org today. Thanks.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.